I always thought the worst feeling in the world was betrayal. Turns out, it's doubt. That moment right before the truth hits you, when your heart already knows, but your brain begs for another explanation. It was a Thursday. Ordinary on the surface. My wife, Emily, kissed me on the cheek like she always did, coffee in one hand, car keys in the other. Long day ahead, she muttered. Budget meeting at 4. Then I might have to swing by the warehouse. Warehouse. She worked for a furniture company that stored high-end reclaimed wood. Old barns, salvaged churches, even dismantled farmhouses, all shipped in from across the country. It made sense. Or at least it used to. I remember the way the light filtered through the blinds that morning. It was soft, golden, almost romantic, the kind of light that makes you feel stupid for being suspicious. But I couldn't shake it. That week, she'd been off, distant. Her smiles were rushed. Her phone was always upside down. And she'd started locking it, something she never used to do. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who checks phones, who questions locations, who follows someone like a cliché in a bad movie. But by noon, I couldn't sit still. Something wasn't right. I opened the location sharing we had set up months ago, just in case of emergencies, and stared at the red dot blinking on my screen. It wasn't her office. It wasn't the warehouse either. Abandoned barn, County Road 17, the map said. No restaurants, no suppliers, no furniture salvage sites, just empty land, brown fields, and a structure that looked like it should have collapsed 20 years ago. At first, I froze. Closed the app, reopened it. Told myself maybe she got lost, maybe her phone glitched. Maybe the GPS was rerouting. Maybe. But then I checked again 10 minutes later, still there. Still unmoving. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. That's when the cold started to settle into my chest. Not panic, not yet. Just a numb, slow freeze, like my bloodstream was turning to ice. I didn't grab a coat. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just got in the car and drove. It was a little over 40 miles out, mostly through winding roads and stretches of open land. I remember the silence more than the drive, how loud it felt inside my head. No radio, no music. Just the hum of the engine and the thudding of my thoughts, one after the other, like a slow march towards something I didn't want to find. The barn came into view just past a row of broken trees. It was leaning slightly to the left, its wood sun-bleached and scarred by time. Vines clung to its walls like veins on old skin. The roof sagged in the middle, and a single rusted pickup sat parked near the side. Unfamiliar, unmarked. I parked far enough away not to be seen and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might hold me together. My mind ran through every scenario, each one worse than the last. Drugs? An affair? Something darker? My legs felt heavy as I stepped out, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots the only sound for miles. The air was dry, dusty, and there was a faint smell of old hay and rot, like memories left too long in the sun. I walked slowly, cautiously. I didn't want to make a sound. The barn doors were slightly ajar, one creaking gently in the wind. I pressed my back against the side wall and peered through the crack. That's when I saw her. Emily. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't working. But what I saw wasn't what I expected. There was no lover, no secret rendezvous, just her, sitting on the dirt floor, cross-legged, surrounded by boxes, papers, and what looked like old photographs. Her eyes were swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. Her hands trembled as she held something in her lap, a journal maybe, or a folder. I couldn't tell. I stood there frozen, 1,000 questions clogging my throat. What was this place? Why was she here? And what the hell had she been hiding for all these years? I should have walked in. I should have demanded answers, but instead, I stayed outside, because something about the way she sat there, haunted, fragile, told me this wasn't Just about me. It was bigger. Much bigger. And I was about to walk straight into a past she never meant for me to see. We met in a bookstore in Portland. Not the kind of place you'd expect to meet the love of your life, but that's how it happened. I was hunting for a gift, something last minute for my sister's birthday, and she was sitting on the floor between two aisles, reading a novel with a cracked spine and a coffee she'd clearly forgotten to drink. Her hair was messy in that perfectly careless way. She looked up and smiled, like she recognized me, even though we were strangers. Emily always had that kind of presence, soft but magnetic. She didn't dominate a room, but you always knew when she was in it. There was a kindness in her, a stillness that felt rare. And I was tired of noise. Back then, I was coming off a rough breakup. My life felt like something I'd inherited from someone else. A job I didn't love. An apartment that smelled like old carpet. Friends who were growing distant. Emily was calm. Her world was curated. Slow mornings. Meaningful eye contact. No small talk. We fell into each other quickly. I proposed after a year. Our wedding was small. Just close friends in a patch of forest behind a friend's cabin. No church, no drama. Just two people making a promise they actually meant. I thought I knew her. That's what keeps looping in my head now, watching her from the shadows of that barn. I thought I knew her. In our home. She was the kind of wife who remembered the way I liked my eggs. Who filled the house with candles in winter. Who left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror with dumb jokes and little reminders that I mattered. But there were cracks I ignored, not obvious ones. Nothing that screamed run. More like soft creaks in the foundation she hated talking about. Her childhood. Said it was complicated. Her parents had both passed by the time we met. Her father when she was 15. Her mother a few years later, but I never saw photos. No yearbooks. No boxes of memories. When I asked, she'd say, they weren't the sentimental type. And I let it go. There were also the nights she'd disappear into herself. We'd be watching a movie or just lying in bed, and suddenly I'd feel her drift. Like a light switch had flipped. Her eyes would glaze, not with sadness, with distance. As if she was walking through rooms I couldn't see. And then there was the panic attack. It only happened once. But I can't forget it. We were driving through upstate New York, celebrating our 2nd anniversary. I missed an exit, took a back road by accident. Suddenly she stiffened. Her breathing went shallow. She asked me to stop the car. When I did, she got out and threw up in the ditch. I held her, confused, asking what happened, and all she said was, "I've been here before." I didn't think I'd ever come back. She never explained what she meant. I didn't push. We drove back in silence and never talked about it again. Now, standing outside this barn, watching her cradle whatever secret she'd buried out here, those moments click into place like puzzle pieces I'd refused to flip over. She wasn't hiding something small. She was protecting something massive. Or someone. And I knew, with the kind of gut-deep certainty that makes your legs weak, that this wasn't the first time she'd been here, this place, this barn. It was part of her past, a past she had rewritten, sanitized, or maybe erased completely. And somehow, all these years later, she was still coming back to it. I inched closer to the door, every part of me trembling, not from fear of what I might find, but from the realization that the woman I loved might not even exist the way I thought she did. And in that moment, she looked up. Not at me. She still didn't know I was there. She looked toward the far wall of the barn, at something I couldn't see from my angle, and then she whispered something, just one name, a name I'd never heard before, but the way she said it, like it broke her in half. I knew it mattered more than anything she ever told me. The name she whispered, Noah, echoed inside that barn like a secret that had been waiting years to be spoken out loud. It wasn't loud, but it was final. The kind of word that carries grief in its syllables. I froze, my breath caught. The name meant nothing to me, but the weight in her voice. It meant everything. I backed away from the door, careful not to make a sound. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure it would give me away. I couldn't stop staring at her. My wife. The woman I shared a bed with, a mortgage with, a life with, sitting alone in the ruins of a place I'd never known existed, crying over a name I'd never heard. And then it hit me. How many other names were there? How many stories? How many rooms inside her I'd never been invited into? The drive home was a blur. The sky was fading from blue to burnt orange, and I couldn't tell if it was beautiful or haunting. Everything looked like a memory I didn't belong in. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, knuckles white from gripping too tight, like I was trying to hold on to a version of her that was already gone. When I walked through the front door, the house felt foreign, like I'd broken into someone else's home. The candles on the table, the jacket on the back of the chair, the picture frames on the wall, us smiling on a lake, on a hike, at a wedding. Images that now felt staged, as if I'd been loving a performance. I sat down in the kitchen and tried to think, but thinking only made it worse. I reached for the drawer, the one where she kept her planner, her receipts, her junk. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just needed something to make this make sense. That's when I found the photo. Tucked beneath a stack of old grocery lists, there was a Polaroid, faded, slightly bent. It was her, much younger, maybe late teens, hair longer, face thinner. She was holding a baby, swaddled in blue. And beside her stood a man I'd never seen before, tall, dark hair, one hand on her shoulder, the other holding a weathered straw hat. The barn was behind them, the same barn. On the back, written in her handwriting, Noah, 3 months, September. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours. Time slowed, thickened, stopped. My mind rejected it. It couldn't compute. There had never been a child, not in our marriage, not in her stories. She told me once, casually, maybe too casually, that she didn't think she could have kids, that she'd made peace with it. That was a lie. She had a son, and from the look in that photo, from the tenderness in her eyes, she had loved him. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping against the tile. My stomach turned. I stumbled into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, gripping the edge of the sink like it was the only thing holding me up. That night, I barely slept. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of her keys in the door. She didn't come home. The next morning, her side of the bed was still untouched, and I remembered something she once said, years ago, during a stormy night when the power had gone out and we were lying in the dark, listening to the wind scrape against the windows. "If anything ever happens to me," she said softly, "promise you won't go looking for the answers. Some things are buried for a reason." At the time, I thought it was just one of those strange philosophical things people say when the world feels fragile. I kissed her forehead and told her she was being dramatic. But now I wasn't so sure. Now I was certain that she meant this. That barn, that baby, that name. Noah. A name she never told me. A child she never mentioned. A part of her life she buried like a body. And I was about to dig it all up. When she finally came home the next evening, she looked drained. Her eyes were rimmed red. Mascara faded like war paint after a lost battle. She didn't say a word at first. Just placed her keys on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and walked to the sink like muscle memory was the only thing keeping her moving. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just watched her hands, how they trembled slightly as she poured a glass of water. She noticed me eventually, standing in the kitchen doorway, and her lips pressed together in that way she did when she was preparing herself. Not for a lie, for a conversation she didn't want to have. "I went to the barn," I said quietly. The glass in her hand froze mid-her. Then slowly, carefully, she set it down. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't ask why I went. She didn't say anything at all. just stared at me with eyes that were equal parts sorrow and surrender. And I realized she wasn't angry. She was relieved. "Did you see me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded. There was a pause, the kind that hangs in the air like fog. She opened her mouth like she was about to explain everything, but then she didn't. "I found the picture," I added. Her breath caught, and I saw her knees falter slightly, as if the floor beneath her shifted. I took a step closer. "Emily, why did you never tell me?" She closed her eyes, just for a second. When she opened them again, they were filled with something ancient. Not just grief, guilt. "You weren't supposed to find that part of me," she said. "Then who was?" Her silence was answer enough. She sat down at the kitchen table, and for a moment, we just breathed in the same space, as if we both knew that what came next would burn everything we built. I wanted to push. I wanted to scream, demand the truth, accuse her of betrayal. But I didn't, because I could see it, in the slump of her shoulders, in the way she was pulling at the sleeve of her sweater. She was already punishing herself more than I ever could. So instead, I asked the one question that felt safe: "Is he alive?" She blinked, slowly, then nodded. Double quotes, "Yes, he's alive." "And the man in the photo?" A pause, then flatly, "Gone." There was more. I knew there was more, but I could tell she wasn't ready. Not yet, so I stepped back, gave her the illusion of space, while underneath, every cell in my body screamed for answers. That night, she went to bed early. Didn't even undress. Just curled up on top of the blankets, facing the wall. And I stood there in the hallway, watching her through the crack in the door, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I didn't sleep. I waited until I heard her breathing deepen, that soft rhythm that meant she was finally under, and I crept downstairs. I pulled out the photo again, studied it. That man's face, it was sharp, but something about it tugged at me. Like I'd seen him before. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. She had a password. Of course she did. But it was the same. One she used for Netflix, for our Amazon account, for everything. Her mother's birthday. It opened. Her search history was clean. Her emails mostly empty. But there was one folder on her desktop with a single document inside, titled only, "For Noah." I clicked it. And suddenly, I wasn't in our house anymore. I was inside her mind, inside a world of trauma, love, and loss so tangled I didn't know where to begin unraveling it. The letter wasn't long, but every word was soaked in confession. "You'll never know me the way I once knew you. You were 3 months old when I had to leave. I was 17. Your father said it was for the best, said I wasn't stable enough, that I'd ruin you. He was older, wealthy, connected. I didn't stand a chance. They made me sign. I didn't understand what I was signing. Just that it meant I wasn't your mother anymore. I kept the barn because it was the only place that still held our story. Your first laugh happened there. Your first fever. Your first night sleeping through till morning. I came back every year, just to be near the memory of you. I know you'll never read this. I don't know if you even know I exist. But I never stopped being your mother, even if the world made me invisible." I sat there, heart in my throat, tears pricking my eyes, staring at the screen like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. This wasn't just a secret. This was her scar, one she'd carried through our entire marriage, silently bleeding. While I complained about petty things like mismatched laundry or forgotten takeout orders, I closed the laptop. And I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just married to someone who kept a secret. I was married to someone who had been silenced, robbed of the very thing that might have defined her the most. And now I had to decide if I was strong enough to walk with her through what came next, because part of me wanted to run, but another part, the part that still loved her, was already walking back toward that barn. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, fed the cat, asked if I wanted eggs. Her voice was flat but functional, the way people sound when they've buried something so deep they can't dig it up without collapsing. Didn't ask about the letter. Not yet. I knew that confronting her too soon would make her shut down again. And something told me, if I wanted the full truth, I'd need to find it myself. So I started digging. Quietly. I called in sick to work. Told her I had a migraine. She didn't question it. Just kissed my forehead and left. Same jacket, same purse, same brave smile she wore like armor. As soon as she was gone, I opened her laptop again. Not to violate her privacy. I'd already done that. I was past guilt. I needed answers. Real ones. The document was still there, untouched. But this time, I opened her bookmarks. One was a private investigator. Another was a lawyer in upstate New York. And a third was a news article, local. Dated 15 years ago. I clicked. Prominent local developer wins full custody battle after teen mother declared unfit. There it was. Her name. Her face. And is Michael Lanford. The man in the photo. My stomach dropped. I kept reading. Lanford had been 32 when he got custody of their son. She was 17. The article painted her as unstable, emotionally volatile, a girl who struggled with consistent behavior and exhibited signs of dissociation. I knew that language. It wasn't truth. It was strategy. It was how rich men dismantle poor girls in courtrooms. I googled Langford next. He wasn't just a developer. He was a tycoon. Multiple properties across the state. Political donations. A non-profit on family preservation. Ironically enough, but the part that made me pause, the part that made the room tilt beneath me, was a recent headline. From just 6 months ago. Tragic accident claims life of local teen, son of developer Michael Langford. I clicked faster than I could breathe. Noah. He was 17. Same age she'd been when she lost him. A car accident. Late night. Rural. Road. The article was clinical, efficient. He had been returning from a party. Toxicology report pending. No suspicion of foul play. But there was a photo. It was him. The same eyes as hers. God. The same mouth. My throat tightened. And I understood. She wasn't just mourning a secret. She was grieving a child who died thinking his mother had abandoned him. And now she had nowhere to put that grief. No gravestone with her name on it. No stories she was allowed to tell. No one who'd believe she'd ever held him in her arms. I sat on the floor of our living room, staring at the screen, feeling like I'd walked straight into a tragedy written by fate and sealed in silence. And something else started to take shape, something darker. Why was she contacting lawyers now? Why the investigator? Why return to the barn so many times if Noah was gone? Unless she had found something. Or someone that suggested he'd tried to find her. A letter? A journal? A message left behind? The possibility made my chest ache. I had to. No more. I called the law firm she bookmarked. Posed as someone asking about posthumous parental claims. I didn't give a name, just asked if it was possible for someone to prove biological parentage after a death, for inheritance, for identity. The woman on the phone paused, then said, carefully, it's rare. But yes, in cases of contested custody, especially where adoption wasn't formalized. Blood ties matter, even post-mortem. Especially if there's an estate involved. Estate, Michael Langford. I checked again. His net worth had ballooned after Noah's death. Insurance, trust funds, quietly redistributed across holdings. But if Emily proved she was Noah's biological mother, especially if he had left, anything behind naming her ... she'd have a legal claim. But more than that, she'd finally be acknowledged. It wasn't about money. It was about truth. About reclaiming something that had been stolen from her with ink on paper and courtroom cruelty. And she wasn't doing it out of revenge. She was doing it for Noah, because in death, he had reached back. And now she was reaching forward. But there was one thing I still didn't understand. Why the barn? Why keep going back? Unless there was more there. More than memory, more than grief. Something Noah left behind, or maybe someone. A confession? A secret that could unravel everything Langford built? My pulse raced as a new thought landed. Like a hammer. What if Emily wasn't the only one hiding something? The next morning I asked her gently, over coffee, "Why the barn, Em? After everything, why go back?" She froze for just a second, not long, but enough. Her hand tightened around the handle of her mug. Then she looked at me, tired and honest, because that's the only place in the world where I was ever someone's mother. I didn't push, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. That afternoon, while she was out at a meeting with the lawyer, now confirmed, I drove back to the barn alone. The sky was overcast this time, heavy with the kind of clouds that feel like secrets pressing down. I stepped through the warped doors and stood still, letting the silence settle. The same boxes were there, the same musty air. But in the back corner, half buried beneath a weathered tarp, I saw something I hadn't seen before. A metal lockbox. It looked recently disturbed. I knelt down, hands shaking, and pried it open. Inside were papers. Dozens of them. Some yellowed with age, others crisp and recent. Letters, medical documents, school reports. In one envelope, torn open, addressed simply, "To whoever finds this." I tried. The handwriting was shaky. Teenage. It was Noah's. I unfolded the pages, heart-hammering, and read, "They told me she didn't want me. That she ran off, but I never believed them. Not really. When I turned 15, I found a box in my dad's office. Inside was a letter with her name, Emily Rowe. She wasn't a ghost. She was real. I searched online, found her photo. In some wedding announcement. I couldn't contact her. I didn't know how, so I came here. I found the barn. I don't think she knew I'd been here too. I didn't leave a note. I just sat where she must have sat. Touched the wood she touched. I didn't know what I wanted. Just to know if she ever thought of me. I think she did. I hope she still does. At the bottom was a single date. 3 weeks before his death. I sat there on the dirt floor, holding that piece of paper like it was burning through my hands. He had found her, and she never knew. He came looking, quietly, like her. Two silent people orbiting each other across years of lies. And no one told her. Michael Langford had let his son die believing he was unwanted. That was no longer a sin of the past. It was a present crime. I took photos of everything, and I called the one person I never thought I'd speak to. Langford. His number wasn't hard to find. Public records. A quick search. He answered on the second ring, smooth voice, rehearsed politeness. "This is Michael Langford." I didn't introduce myself. I just said, "Noah found her. He came to the barn." Silence. Then a soft exhale, calculated. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but I'd advise you to stay out of things you don't understand. I understand enough." He left a letter. Another pause. This time, longer. I imagined him sitting at some polished desk, fingers steepled, trying to control the unraveling. "You have no idea what that girl was like," he said quietly. "What she was capable of. She was a child. You were the adult. She was unstable. She was silenced." My voice cracked, not out of anger, but grief. For Noah, for Emily, for everything stolen in the name of power. And then I said what I knew would land like a blade. "She's filing for posthumous recognition." And we have his words, handwritten, dated. He came to find her, Michael. He knew the truth. For the first time, his composure slipped. "She has no right. She has every right," I cut in. "And now, so does the world." I hung up. No threats. No promises. Just truth. That night, I sat with Emily in our living room. I didn't tell her what I found yet. I just held her hand. And for the first time since this all began, She let herself collapse into me. Tears, real ones. No words. Just grief. Just gravity. And something else. Relief. Because somewhere, she knew, the story was finally breaking free from the shadows. 2 weeks later, Emily stood on the steps of the courthouse, a folder pressed to her chest. Her hands were steady, her eyes clearer than I'd seen in months. The petition had been filed. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about legacy. It was about truth, about carving her name back into a life she had been erased from. Noah's name would carry hers now, on paper. In history. In memory. The state recognized her as his biological mother. Posthumously, yes, but officially. Publicly, she wasn't invisible anymore. But it wasn't the legal validation that changed her. It was the letter, that fragile piece of handwriting from a boy caught between lies, reaching toward the truth with trembling fingers. That letter saved her in a way I never could. It told her she wasn't forgotten, that all the years she spent carrying shame that didn't belong to her, they weren't for nothing. He knew. In his final days, he knew. We returned to the barn. Once more, not to search, but to say goodbye. She brought flowers. I brought a small wooden frame with the letter inside. We mounted it on the back wall where the sun would hit it through the slats every morning. A monument, not to death, to connection. After that, we changed, not all at once. Not in movie scene montages. But slowly, she started talking more, not about Noah, not always, but about herself. Her childhood, her pain, her healing, and I listened. Without trying to fix it. Without trying to rescue her, I just sat in the dark with her. Until she could stand in the light again. And me? I stopped trying to be the version of a husband who only thrives in peace. I learned to be a partner in chaos. To love someone not despite their past, but because of it. Grief doesn't leave, but it reshapes, and so did we. Now, when I see her look out the window with that faraway expression, I don't ask her where she went. I already know. She went back to the barn. To that moment. To him. But the difference now, she always comes back to me, because she's no longer alone, and neither am I. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.